Hey everyone, David C. Anderson here coming at you from the Knife Center, and today I'm going to be comparing two different zero tolerance models. It's the new 357 versus its predecessor, the 350. Let's check them out. Now earlier this year, ZT released the 308, which is sort of a revamp and relaunch of their 300 series of knives, which is really what put them on the map in their early days. They've kind of done the same thing with the new 357. That 357 is their newest model, and we're going to be comparing it to one of their oldest models that's still in production, the 350. Even though they're both executed very differently, they're positioned very close in the marketplace, the specs are kind of similar, and even the price is a little similar. The new one comes in around $150 depending on which option you get, and the old one actually comes in a little bit more, hovering around $160 plus or minus a little bit, depending again on which option you get. Both of these knives featured black G10 handles, as well as a liner lock and speed-safe assisted opening action, as well as a particle steel blade. But really, it's the finer details that separate these two knives. The original 350 was released in 2009, so the 357 has more than a decade of extra refinement and experience, reflecting the modern trends in today's knife marketplace. We'll start with the handles in this case. The original 350 comes with black G10, just a hint of texture, not too aggressive, and they are kept flat. We do have some nice rounded edges so that it's not sharp, as well as a series of spots containing some pretty broad jimping to give you a little bit of extra grip. So while those handles are wide and flat, the 357 is a little bit narrower. It's not quite as tall of a handle, and there's a little bit of extra machining going on, relieving some areas in a few places to give it a more streamlined look and a more elegant shape in the hand. This knife also has a deep carry pocket clip, which is, they've been around for a while, but you've certainly been seeing them more and more these days. And it's a two-position clip. You can mount it on the left or the right-hand side in a tip-up configuration. The older 350, meanwhile, features a four-position pocket clip. You can carry it on either side, tip up or tip down, but in sort of a sign of the times back in 2009, for one thing, the clip is not a deep carry clip, and it also, in its default position right out of the box, holds the blade in a tip-down configuration. Again, that's just the way things were a little more commonly back then than they are today. Now, as far as the liner lock on the 350, just like the scales, they're definitely rugged, they're nice and thick. Not quite as thick as some of their titanium frame locks out there, but definitely thicker than some of the liner locks you'd see out there. That way, this is still a hard working knife because you get a good contact patch between the liner lock and the blade steel itself. The 357 maintains that tradition of those slightly thicker liner locks, again for a good solid feel and a good solid lockup. One thing you're going to see, however, on the 357 that you don't on the older 350, again, it's the small details, a few couple nicer things that you're not going to find on that older knife. The first thing you're going to see right here behind the flipper tab, a couple of the edges of the liner have actually been scooped away or sort of chamfered away. That means that when you flip the knife, you have kind of a nice soft landing spot for your thumb. You're not going to have a sharp edge or a hard 90-degree edge for your finger right there. I shouldn't say sharp because it's definitely not sharp in the case of the 350. In fact, you've actually got some jimping there. You just don't have that nice little scoop out. One thing that hasn't changed though between these two knives, the action. If anything, the action on this older one actually feels a little bit better, but that's probably just down to the differences in these two specific knives I've got in front. That speed-safe assisted opening action has always been fast, it's always been consistent, and it feels just as good today as when Ken Onion started rolling them out into the Kershaw knives. Now, speaking of him real quick, the 350 is a Ken Onion design, whereas the new 357 is an in-house Kershaw design. But back to the liners real quick on the 357, you're also going to see on the lock bar release itself, similar to on that backside, you've got a section that's been kind of beveled out to create a nice place for your thumb, a little bit more comfortable to use when you actually go to unlock the knife. Additionally, for the lanyard hole, the old 350 has just a simple drilled hole going through the back spacer and both sides of the knife. Meanwhile, both the back spacer and the liners actually have a little bit of area of the G10 has been scooped away from it to form a little bit wider lanyard hole out there near the back. All right, finally, let's get to the blades themselves. As you can see, they are definitely very different in shape, but they do have one thing in common in particular, and that's this little scoop out here in front of the thumb ramp. They're not exactly the same shape, but in function, they do two things. One, they're a really good place to choke up on with your thumb. It creates a nice, comfortable spot to do that. It also works very well as a place to put your index finger if you want to get some finer control of the tip of the blade. It's at just the right length to execute that. And that's really the thing that ties these two blades together in these very similarly numbered series. They also show off two of ZT's signature blade finishes as well. The 350, of course, sports their tiger stripe finish, which was something that was very big in the early days of ZT. You still see it a little bit now, but you see this a lot more, their signature black wash finish. This black and stonewashed look takes the popular stonewashed finish and elevates it a little bit, creates a different look, and definitely very distinctive. Now, in addition to the two differences in the blade finish, you can get both of these in a different finish. You can get the 350 still with a standard black finish, and you can get the new 357 with a standard, or not their standard stonewash finish actually, their working finish, which is a very heavy stonewash. But the blade steel is very different here. You've got S30V on the older knife and CPM 20CV on the newer knife. Definitely a more premium steel for a little bit less money right now. So there's definitely, that one's a bit more of a bargain if what you're going for is maximum performance. However, I still think there's a place for the 350 in the modern lineup. Even though the blade steel isn't technically as nice as the new 357, you do get a little bit more overall edge. Part of that's due to the actual length of sharpened edge itself and the inclusion of the recurve, which gives you a little bit more to work with. But because of how broad it is, even though we've only got about 3¼ inches of blade, the broadness of it combined with the broadness of the handle make the old 350 feel even more suited to hard work than the 357. Now, part of that may just be an impression created by the weight of the knife, but I think the broader handle definitely allows you to get a fuller grip on the knife than you can on the newer one. Because at the end of the day, the liners are still nice and thick on the new knife, so it should stand up to some heavier use, just like the 350, and it's a little bit easier to carry in your pocket if you don't want something as beefy. But if you're going for maximum overbuilt between these two and you haven't decided, I think the 350 definitely deserves a look. So at the end of the day and the end of this video, that brings us down to the one question: which one of these knives do you prefer? Make sure to let us know in the comments, or if there's something else you'd rather spend your 150-ish bucks on, let us know that down there as well. In the meantime, we'll leave links to these knives in the description so you can head over to KnifeCenter.com if you want to get your hands on one. I'm David C. Anderson from the Knife Center, signing off. See you next time.
And off the cuff versus. That was disgusting.
And that's really the thing that ties these two. Bleh.
Yeah.
Now, earlier this year, zero tolerance.